Hey everybody, Sep here. We are getting into some of the nitty gritty here in this video. Hopefully you watched the previous videos on the basic stuff, company info, setting up users. Now we're getting into the really important stuff, the stuff that you may not get right the first time. You can't really do it wrong, but it's something you're probably going to go back and edit or change as you use the software, as you figure out your processes. What this video is about is setting up your statuses. Again, this is just a blank version of the software that we use for demos, and there is some statuses set up in here. What I want to give you a quick view of, though, is the statuses that we have set up for our company. I'll get this video off of here so you don't have to see my face. Here we go. This is the version of the software that we use at our company. And these are the statuses that we have set up. And you may do this completely differently. I see all different scenarios with the statuses. How many statuses, what they're named, even the little icons. The biggest thing to understand here when you set up your statuses is you need to understand the flow of your process and basically how the job works from beginning to end. Most jobs begin as a lead, they finish out as closed. So, two simple statuses, lead and closed. What happens in between is the important part. One mistake that a lot of people make with these statuses is they think of them as a task. A task is something that's completely different than the status. It usually happens inside of that status. The best way to think of the statuses is as a holding place for the job. What you want to achieve, though, is inside each status a process, an internal process in your company that's going to get that job moved to the next status. So the idea is that in a pretty predictable time frame, that job is going to move through all these statuses all the way up until closed. That actual process is going to be broken out with tasks, and we'll talk about that later. But right now, when you set up the statuses, again, you're thinking about when this job is at X position, X place in the process, where do I want it in the software so that it's obvious what needs to happen next. So the way to set up those statuses, again, go to that settings gear. And down here, second from the bottom, statuses, click on there and that brings you to your status page. You can move these statuses around by hovering over the two little lines on the left, or you can click on a status and actually delete it, or you can edit it from inside here. Let's go over a couple of these edit features. Days till alert. Typically, again, your jobs need to flow through the statuses in a timely manner, and most people like to be alerted if the job has been sitting there for an extended period of time. And you set up how many days that's going to be. So I'm going to jump back here to my statuses, and for instance, if I win a job and it sits in there for more than 14 days, for example, I want to know why it's sitting in there. Maybe it's a legitimate reason. Customers waiting on cabinets. It's a new home, so they're actually building the home. But you want to have data in here that describes, explains why the job is sitting there. And what this does, this days till alert, when you set that amount of time, I'm going to save this real quick and go back to the home page. When that job's been sitting for too long, past the amount of days that you set up in the statuses, it throws up this little alert, exclamation point, and I can see right here, this job's been sitting in this status for 165 days. Again, this homepage on this demo software is most of them are rotting. That's the term we use because this is not an active version of the software. This is for demos and stuff like that. But you get the idea. Once those jobs have been sitting in that status for too long, however much time you set up, throws up that alert. We'll get into later the different ways to handle those alerts. So inside of a job, if it needs to stay there, but you want to take away that alert, you can snooze it and it'll stay there without throwing up that alert. We'll get into a little bit of that later. Back to the statuses though. You're going to set up, again, how much time you want a job to be able to sit in that status. And then you can edit the icon that shows up on the dashboard. Pretty straightforward. And then you have this box here. And this is something that you may change or, maybe not check off this box right away until you figure out your exact processes. But what this does is whatever tasks get set up for a particular status, by checking this box, you're requiring that those tasks are finished before the job can move to the next status. Again, I would probably leave that unchecked for now until you figure out basically a bulletproof process. But just remember that's there, and you can go back and check that at any point to control that process. That pretty much shows you how to set up your statuses. I'll go back to that page real quick. Again, you can make a new status by clicking on New over here. Name it whatever you want. You can change the names of these statuses and put in those details about days till alert. Biggest thing here again though is to figure out your processes, figure out how your jobs work, and then set up your statuses accordingly. Again, just to repeat myself, your statuses are not your tasks. So typically you'll have a status that will say something like templated. That's where a job goes after it's been templated and it stays there till it's ready to go to programming. You wouldn't necessarily have a status that says do the template, because that's a task. That's not a holding place. Hope that's clear. This is a huge part of setting up the software. Again, don't be intimidated if you don't know exactly how to set it up. You're going to figure that out as you use the software, and using the software is going to force you to figure out the best method to get your jobs from lead all the way to closed, depending on how your company works. There you are, setting up statuses. See you on the next video.